on, this doll finally uh, ducks into this pile of grass and weeds. And the grass and weeds are shaking. And he comes up on this doll and peels back the weeds, and here's this doll with its arms over its face, kind of protecting itself. So next thing is he grabs a hold of it and starts and catches it in his hands, and it starts talking to him in some weird language. And the way it was told to me, it was Aboriginal language, but backwards. Okay, so his car mate comes over and he says, "We got to build a fire. We got to burn this evil spirit." And as he's sitting there talking to his friend building the fire, this creature, this doll, which was explained to me is sort of like a Chucky doll, about 2.5 feet tall, or a Cabbage Patch doll. It had the billowy stuffings and the hands of a doll and the plastic face of a doll, hair of a doll. But it was sitting there trying to wrestle its way out of the grip of this Aboriginal. And it was talking backwards, and as the fire was building, the other guy was chanting and whatnot to start the ritual of getting rid of this bad spirit. So this guy was holding the doll, and he grabs and pushes this doll into the fire, and he's about ready to let go, and the doll starts screaming and wrestling to get out of the doll, so he had to hold the doll in the fire, and that's where he got his third-degree burns. He was holding the doll in the fire, and it screamed up to the last minute.
Oh,
now,
wow.
I've heard this story a few times from him. It's on one of my podcasts, but he's elaborated on it quite a bit, and he's actually referred to this particular reservation, which I can't share where it is other than it's in Canada, as the Haunted Reservation. And I can honestly tell you, it's a holy cow story. When he was telling me, the back of my hands and back of my neck was, literally hair was standing up on the end.
Well, that's what we need is good, scary stories. I mean, I don't know if you know it, but starting in September, it's our first year anniversary. So what we're going to do, as we're getting picked up by a few radio stations, is on Friday nights, the last half an hour of the show, we're going to take live call-ins where people can, tell their scary stories. So, I mean, when I found about you, I figured, hey, perfect thing before we start doing it to have some really good stories.
Heck yeah. Well, here's let's see, really scary story. All right, this is one of the stories.
Now, we're not talking about my ex-wife.
No ex-wives involved in here. Okay. This story I actually did, this is one of the first stories I told Dark Waters way back when, and this is called His Attention. He had a YouTube streaming channel that I caught wind of last year sometime, maybe a little bit longer than a year ago. So I called in and said, "Well, I got a story for you," and here it goes. Well, as I referenced before, I was in the medical field, and what I did, one of my jobs, this wasn't everything I did in the medical field. One of my jobs was being a respiratory therapist. And the respiratory therapist covers all code calls, like if somebody comes in and they've had a heart attack and your heart stopped and whatnot. I covered ER that night, and I got a page. And I'm not going to say where this ER was. I've worked at many ERs, so that pretty much assures the anonymity of this story. So I'm not going to say names or anything like that. But during the course of this, get this page. And of course, the ER is just, running. You can probably get there within a minute and a half where I was. Run in through the back door where the ambulance lets off the patients and unload the patients. And I looked in the trauma rooms where, if a patient's coming in hot, meaning that, they're performing CPR, that's where they would be. So there was no activity in there other than nurses prepping for the actual receiving of the patient. So I asked, what's happening? And they told me it was a 40-some-year-old patient, no cardiac history kind of deal, and the CPR was started before the ambulance service got there. And then that's all I got. So, there's two levels of chaos that if you're a witness of ER and ambulance service people that they do to get, save patient lives. But it's actually really orchestrated, and you really have to know what you're doing to be a part of this team. So here comes the ambulance in, and I've already started prepping to do intubation. Intubation means taking what's called an endotracheal tube, or for short, ET tube. And it's probably 1.5 feet long tube that you stick in through the mouth or in through the nose and down in through the oral cavity, in through the throat, and past the vocal cords into the lungs.
Ooh.
Yeah. and I've done it many, many times personally.
You mean with people, not yourself?
Oh, not me.
Okay.
I've had it done to me personally a time or two, but I've actually performed the procedure to put the ET tube in. So I had all that. I was prepping all that just to make sure. Sometimes, for whatever reason, the scenario that the ET tube is either bad, broken, or has got a hole in it, or not placed well enough, or it's not big enough, or whatever. You got to be prepped for just about anything that walks through that door. So here he is coming in, hot, no heartbeat, no discernible rhythm or anything, and a lot of chaos is going on around. You got to do a lot of specific things within a short amount of time, which would take me a long time to tell you, which would actually, for me or anybody else that does it, would take literally about 15 seconds to do. Literally, you're just checking to make sure the airway is called what's patent, meaning the air can pass freely between the lungs, and the lung sound equal in volume to each other. And then you assessed all that, and stuff was going just A-okay. And where this guy was a younger guy, usually codes from the time they walk through the door, hit the door in the ER, last about 30 minutes if you do get no turnaround in the patient condition, meaning no heartbeat, no discernible electrical activity or anything like that. So, but where this guy was younger, we, basically went beyond that, and we did heroic measures on this fellow. So, the biggest thing that happened was nothing. We performed CPR for 45, 50 minutes, which on top of the travel from the time that he got into ambulance, plus whatever time he had CPR when he dropped, added on 45, 50 minutes on top of that, he was pronounced dead. So one of the duties after the unfortunate outcome with a patient that doesn't make it, you got to prep the patient, take all the junk that we use to save the patient's life, like the ET tube, all the IV lines and stickers and tapes, and if there's any kind of foreign material from blood to whatever, clean up the patient, make them presentable to whoever may be there for the patient. So, I helped obviously take off the ET tubes and help the nursing clean up the patient a little bit. And everything calms down really quick after all this stuff happens. Once the code's called, it gets really solemn, really quiet. There's other activity going on in the ER, but it's like a big parade and nothing, more or less. So I'm done with the patient. The curtain's drawn all the time with these types of patients. So I walk out, and my back's to the actual trauma area with the curtain drawn. And why I remember this, I don't know, but the curtain was yellow. For whatever reason, that sticks out in my head. So one of the things that we do is, document on everything that we do medically. So I'm documenting what I did with this particular gentleman. And I'm, well into doing, a lot of check marking that I did this and I did that, and, ET2 placement was confirmed, and yada, yada, yada. All of a sudden, behind me, I hear a loud scream. Help me, help me. I'm burning up, help me. And by the time he got to the I'm burning up part, I'm turning around and running in to where I came from. And I pulled the curtain. Did I pull? I may or may not have, because that was a whole lot of compressed time right there. But the curtain was open. And I was there with another nurse that was beside of me, and another nurse across from me. The nurse that was next to the patient, as this patient that we just coded for over an hour, give or take, was up in bed. And mind you, this patient had no activity whatsoever. Never seen the patient move or anything. Even on some patients, when you do code them and they're pronounced dead, they'll actually flip and flop and even kick and whatnot, just as part of that's unfortunate detail. But anyway,
you're going to get people where they won't sleep tonight over that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, this guy just had finished. I'm burning up, and he slumps over, and the rails on the bed are up. You know, I don't know if you've ever been to.
I've been in ER. I've been in ER plenty of times.
Yeah. So this guy slumps over to my right, but his left, forward, and we're all like dumbfounded for like half a second, 2 seconds, something like that. I don't know. It was really quick. Snap, 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 snap. So the next thing I do, the doctor comes in to see what's all this commotion, and he said, "What the hell is going on in here?" And so this guy just yelled. He's, "Oh my God, let's code him." So literally, we pull the guy back. I tubed the guy, meaning I put the ET tube in, fix and do all the things I just explained. And we did CPR on him for another 15, 20, 30 minutes. I can't remember how long it was. But we get the guy back. The craziest thing, the guy actually does survive. And I didn't do a lot after that other than get him back. We put him on life support with a breathing machine to help him out with any cardiac issues. And SOP, standard of practice, is to keep them on life support to reduce the work of breathing. Because when you're breathing, your lungs is producing a lot of different variants and pressures that are transmitting back through the heart. If you hold your breath, your pressure in your chest will transmit back through your heart, through your ventricles into your heart muscle, and put stress on the heart. So we put them on these breathing machines and paralyze them. So the less stress you can have, the less stress you produce on the heart. So that's why we do that. So I never see this guy awake after that until the following day. So anytime that we do any kind of heart attack victims, or like this asystole, meaning that he didn't have any heart rate or heart rhythm or anything, the doctor definitely should order serial EKG. Serial meaning that order them every so often, every 2 hours, every 3 hours, or however the designation by the physician goes. So by the time I come back, I was on 12-hour shifts. So another 18 hours after that, the guy's extubated, meaning that the tube's pulled and he's awake and been allowed to recover a little bit. And I was transferred from having ER duty to having ICU duty, an intensive care unit duty. And part of my duties as a respiratory therapist at this particular facility was doing EKGs, electrocardiogram tracings, the 12-lead EKGs, where they stick all these little square stickers or round stickers all over your chest, and sometimes they forget or just leave them on your chest, and days later you remember it after you're discharged from the hospital, and you got these really corroded, stuck on in your chest hair tabs on you that hurts like hell to pull off. Well, that's what I do, or did. So I walk in, introduce myself to this guy, and he barely says any words to me. He sort of looked at me like he had a familiarity with me.
Uh-huh.
But I honestly didn't know anything about the fella, other than I did code him the night before. And he just shook his head, and I introduced myself, and he said, it was just barely what he was trying to say. He just sort of said that he was sorry for all he's done in his life, and that I don't know why he told me this, but he said that the flames